Right, we've got some good verses tonight. So if you turn to the end of Mark chapter 8, and this evening we're looking at verses 31 to 38. So Mark chapter 8, verses 31 to 38. So beginning at 31. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels." So those are our verses we're looking at tonight as we close Mark chapter 8. Now, I have made a PowerPoint. You'd be glad to know. So if that'll come up, Andrew. There we go, PowerPoint. So our 2 points this evening we're going to look at in these sort of two sections. The first one, seeing the Messiah in 2020 vision. So looking at who the true Messiah is, and then looking at, understanding the nature of discipleship. So those are the 2 points we're going to look at this evening. So just to really understand what Jesus is talking about here, we need to kind of appreciate that we have just passed the halfway point of the Gospel of Mark 2 weeks ago when James spoke. And we looked at Peter's confession that Jesus was the Messiah. And that moment in Mark is the centre of the whole book. And it slightly changes from that point onward. So everything prior to Peter's confession that Jesus is the Messiah flows up to that point. And everything after Peter's confession flows downstream to the cross. So, change slide. You may recognise these pictures from a well-known animated film. So up to Mark 8:29, we've been compiling evidence that Jesus is the Son of God, and that he is the Messiah, and it culminates in this confession from Peter that you are the Christ. So let's just have a look at this portfolio of evidence that we've compiled so far. Right in the first verse of Mark, Jesus is called the Son of God. John the Baptist prepared the way for one greater than he. Heaven opened and declared Jesus is God's Son. Jesus drives out an impure spirit, heals many more, including those with leprosy, a man with a shriveled hand, heals a paralytic man and forgives his sins, something unheard of, something only God can do. And people are amazed with how he speaks and the authority he speaks with in the synagogues, and he declares himself Lord of the Sabbath. And then he goes on to calm the storm. He restores a demon-possessed man, raises a dead girl, heals a sick woman. He has authority over natural, supernatural, death, disease. He walks on water, and these huge crowds are beginning to follow him from all over, bringing their sick and continually amazed by him and his teaching. And then finally, in Mark chapter 8, a human confesses that he is the Messiah. A demon has confessed that he is the Son of God, but it's the first instance of a human confessing that Jesus is the Messiah, the chosen one, the Christ. After all this evidence we've built up, linking it to Old Testament prophecy as well, a human has declared that Jesus is the Messiah. But what kind of image have we got so far of who that Messiah is going to be? What is this Messiah going to do? What is his purpose? So next slide. These verses are from Daniel 7, verses 13 to 14. And Jesus often refers to himself, and he will go on to refer to himself in Mark, as the Son of Man. And some theologians, some liberal theologians, are like this, seeing it, that Jesus is saying that he's just a human. But Jesus will be taking this name from Daniel 7. And this is what it says in Daniel 7. And you'll notice I've underlined some kind of key words that will kind of illustrate the kind of Messiah we've been looking at so far. It says, "It's in my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion, an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed." So this is the kind of language that is used when we're looking at who the Messiah is going to be. And elsewhere in the Old Testament, we read that he will be a wonderful counselor, a prince of peace. His government and peace will have no end. He will bring justice and righteousness, and he will uphold the throne of David. That's the image we're getting of this Messiah. And Jesus is referring to himself as the person who will do this. And so far, he has proven by his actions and his words that he is the person going to do this. So you can imagine, with this kind of talk going on, that the disciples are feeling pretty good about themselves at the minute. They've backed the right person. They're probably thinking about which one of Caesar's palaces they're going to have when Jesus overthrows Rome, whether they're going to go into politics or military, and looking forward to the spoils of the kingdom. And a couple of pages later in Mark chapter 10, you'll read that James and John even ask Jesus to sit at his side in his glory. The Messiah is here, he's come, and he's going to throw out all the powers like Rome and reinstate Israel as God's true chosen nation, the leading nation in the world. And those by his side, those who are following him, will want for nothing. However, Jesus, as usual, is already one step ahead of the disciples. And actually, he's already shown them that they are wrong in thinking like this. If you think back to 2 weeks ago with James, we looked at, from verse 22, Jesus heals a blind man in Bethsaida. And he heals the blind man. You remember he healed the blind man in 2 stages. So Jesus spits on the man's eyes, and he sees men that look like trees. And then he puts his hands on his eyes, and the man's eyes are opened. His sight is fully restored. And Jesus here is teaching the disciples something. He's teaching them that, like the blind man, you do not yet have full 20/20 vision. You see an outline of who I am. You see trees that look like men. But now I'm going to fill in the detail of who I am. You're going to see clearly who I am, of the Messiah I'm going to be. And up to these verses, we've seen the outline of the Messiah. Now, from this point on, we're going to fill in the detail of who he is and what he's going to do. So we flowed up to the confession that Jesus is the Messiah, and now we're flowing down to the cross. So just like on that slide, looks like a man like a tree, full vision, we see the cross. So notice verse 31. Notice the wording of it. It says, he then began to teach them. He then began to teach them. This isn't something that Jesus has told his disciples before. This is something new that they have not heard. And it's a message he's going to continue to repeat to them in Mark's Gospel. 3 times, Jesus clearly predicts his own death. Matthew's Gospel puts it, from that time on, he began to teach them. And it gives us a real sense of the change of flow what Jesus is showing them. We are now flowing downstream from Peter's confession. So Jesus begins to teach the disciples. It says he must suffer many things and be rejected by chief priests and elders. It won't be lost on you that this is the polar opposite to the view of the Messiah we've just looked at. Surely the true Messiah will be accepted by the religious authorities. Surely he will be respected by the worldly authorities. How could he possibly be rejected by them? How would he suffer at the hands of them? How would he be killed by them if he was the true Messiah? Notice how Jesus uses the word must. Must suffer, must be killed. Not maybe, not might be, not if I feel like it. And why is that? He says, I must suffer and be killed. Why is that? Because how else would we gain access to the Ancient of Days? How else will our sins be remembered no more? How else will we be as white as snow unless Christ makes a once and for all sacrifice for our sins? How else will there be justice and righteousness if Jesus does not defeat sin? But Peter has not yet come round to this angle of viewing it. And his outspoken nature forces him to rebuke Jesus. And in the Greek, the rebuke is the same word that is used when Jesus rebukes demons and is driving out demons. It's the same word that is used. In Matthew's account, Peter even says that this will never happen to Jesus. These things will never happen. And the issue that Peter has here is that even though he's probably saying that he will not let this happen to Jesus out of love for him, not wanting to let it happen to him, the issue he has is that his vision is still blurry. He still only has an outline of who Jesus is. He likes the bits in Daniel, in chapter 7, of him coming on the clouds of the glory, but he's overlooked other things, like Isaiah 53. We read about someone who would be rejected and suffer, who would be pierced for our transgressions, one who would be led like a lamb to the slaughter. And this is the error we fall into when we don't have a full image of who Jesus is, a full 2020 vision of Jesus. We take the bits we like and we don't really like that bit. We ignore it. We try and put it to one side. We're a bit uncomfortable with it. Jesus is saying here, I must go to the cross. I must go to the cross. And there are plenty of places today that say, you don't need the cross. This is the 21st century. There's no right and wrong. People do what's right in their own eyes. They take their forgiveness, they take the glory, they take their blessings, but they leave the cross to one side. Jesus welcomes and he loves everyone. And that's right, Jesus does love everyone, which is exactly why he went to the cross. It's exactly why he must go to the cross, to pay off the debt of evil that we have done, so that those who will believe in him and put their trust in him will enter his kingdom, where Jesus will be worshipped, and there will be a crown, and there will be glory, and there will be justice. So Jesus responds to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." And he calls him Satan because Peter wants the kingdom without the cross. Just as Satan in the wilderness, when he's tempting Jesus, offers Jesus the kingdom and the glory without death. Satan was tempting Jesus to avoid the cross, have authority over all this. And Peter is doing the same. He's got different motives, but it's the same principle. And in Matthew's account, Jesus calls Peter a stumbling block. And that would be a play on the words with the name Peter, which means rock. He calls him a stumbling block. And he says, you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. Again, it's that whole kingdom now. We want the kingdom now. Him and the disciples wanted the kingdom now. They weren't expecting to be called to be martyrs. So Jesus has begun to teach his disciples that he must suffer and die at the hands of the authorities. And as it says, he speaks about this openly. He's speaking about this openly, but the disciples aren't quite understanding it still. They continue to struggle to understand it throughout Mark, as we'll go on in the next few weeks to see. And it feels like a bit of a crisis point for the followers of Jesus. Maybe this isn't quite the person they thought it was. What exactly have we left everything for? So Jesus, he calls together the crowd and the disciples, and he tells them what they have to do if they want to be his disciple. Verses 34 to 38, let's read them again. 34, then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. So let's have a look at these verses. So we have a command in verse 34. Deny ourselves and take up our cross. So that's the command we have. And you'll notice it is then followed by 4 reasons why we should do this. 4 motivating factors why we should deny ourselves and take up our cross. So here's the command on the slide, verse 34. And you'll notice it's amazing, really. Whenever we have a command, it's not just the command we're given. We're not just told to do it because I said so. He never says, I told you so. He never says, I'm the Messiah, so go and do it. We're always given reasons and motivations why it should be done. So the command, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. That's the command. So where it says, if you want to be my disciples, the kind of literal translation of that would be, if you want to follow me. I think some versions say, I can't remember what some different versions say. But if we were to translate it directly, it would say, if you want to follow me. So Jesus here is saying, if you want to follow me, you have to follow me. So he said, I'm going to the cross. If you want to follow me, you have to go to the cross as well. So to understand self-denial, what he's talking about here, denying ourselves, we want to understand that. Let's understand what the cross is in this context, what will be to take up our cross. So the cross, I know often now it's jewellery, and we've got it on the wall here, but the cross in the first century is an instrument of execution. It would be the modern equivalent of an electric chair or the lethal injection. And it was a terrible instrument of execution. It could take days for people to die, usually through suffocation because of the stress placed on the chest. But the length of time to die would depend on the weather, on dehydration, on exposure. But even the worst thing about this was the shame of it, the guilt of it. It was the process of it, because you were left hung up for all the world to see. You were there just slowly dying for everyone to see. Everyone you knew, every friend, family member you had, could see you there hung up, dying. And those who didn't like you could hurl their insults at you. Deuteronomy, in the book of Deuteronomy, says that if a man is cursed if he's hung on a tree. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here when we're talking about the cross. All of these things to me do not sound nice. They do not sound like things that I want to do. I do not want to suffer. I do not want to be shamed. I do not want to die. And that is the man in me speaking. That is the flesh in me speaking. I don't want those things. I want to be respected. I want people to like me. I want an easy life. I'd like a nice house. I'd like a decent job. Jesus says, deny yourself. Deny yourself. When we say deny ourselves, it depends on your motive for denying yourself. If I'm having tea one evening and there's a nice big cake in front of me, and I think, you know what, I'll have one, but I won't have 2 slices of cake. I won't have the second slice because I don't want to put weight on. But that type of denying myself is doing it for myself. I don't want to put weight on. I'm denying myself for the sake of myself. To truly deny yourself means to do it for God, means to deny yourself pride, deny yourself wealth, deny yourself respect, deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. So we're basically saying, I am willing to be embarrassed. I am willing to suffer and be shamed. I'm willing to be unpopular. And those sound stupid things to do, don't they? Why would we even do that? Why would we want to do that? But this is where the 4 motivations come in. So maybe asking ourselves, why would I want to do that? Well, let's have a look at the motivation. So reason number 1. So verse 35. And I've underlined 2 bits there, you'll notice. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. So reason number 1. If you want to save your life, you will lose it. If you want all these things we've just mentioned, wealth and affluence, security, praise from others, you will lose your life. These are things we naturally desire and seek. But if we go chasing after these things, we will lose our life. We will not have followed Jesus, we will have followed ourselves. That is what I want. We will have followed ourselves. But by denying ourselves and taking up our cross, we will save it. And this is the best bit, the bits you'll notice underlined. Who are we doing it for? Jesus says, for me and for the gospel. That's who we're doing it for. So if Jesus is everything to you, if Jesus is your Lord and Saviour, you would deny yourselves the ways of the flesh for this reason. You will save your life. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for Jesus and for the gospel, which you cherish. And sometimes I can find it a little bit tiring with non-Christians, how they always do what is best for them. Well, what's best for me? Does it work for me? Does it have an advantage for me? If it's not, I'm not doing it. If it's not right for me, it's not for me. And in fairness to them, themselves is all they have to live for. Non-Christians, all they have to live for is themselves. But we as Christians, that's not the case. We live our lives for the sake of Jesus and for the gospel. And the worry for us is that are we going to miss out? Are we going to miss out by following this life? Look at the non-Christians having fun and doing what they want to do. Are we going to miss out? I can promise you, when you get to heaven, you will not sit and think, I wish I'd have earned more money. I wish I'd have got a bigger house. I wish I'd had more fun with my friends. That is not what you will be thinking. Deny ourselves and we will save our lives. There will be no regret It's a little bit small, I might be able to read it, but you notice Romans 8:18 says, "Our present sufferings are not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us." So we will not miss out. There is no missing out. Romans 2:8 says, "For those who are self-seeking and reject the truth and follow evil, there will be wrath and anger." So for those who are self-seeking and reject the truth. So next reason. Second motivation. Verse 36. "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul?" Now, John Wesley wrote in the late 1700s. He was stood near an ageing King George III, who incidentally was born again, I do believe. And he was at the opening of the House of Lords. And George III literally owned a third of the world, the largest ever empire. He had no shortage of money, he had no shortage of palaces or jewellery. He had an army and a navy at his disposal. And he was stood in his ceremonial dress with robes and crowns and makeup. He had the world at his fingertips, one of the most powerful nations in the world. Yet John Wesley noticed that beneath the makeup, there were wrinkles on his face. There was grey hair under his wig. He was a man who would go on to suffer years of insanity until he died. And it shows to us we can pile up as much as we want, but we can't stop aging or death. We can have as much money and authority as we like now, but it won't stop aging or death. So we have to make a choice which way round do we want it. You'll notice the verse, Philippians 3:7, "But whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ." So what good is it to have everything and lose our soul? Next reason number 3. What can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Can you imagine if on my laptop I downloaded the latest edition of Microsoft and I took it to Bill Gates and I said, "Look, Bill, I've just downloaded Microsoft on my laptop. Can I be CEO of Microsoft?" How would he respond to me? "Well, I created Microsoft. What good is it to me that you have just downloaded it on your laptop?" Can we imagine going to God and saying, "Look how much money I've earned in my life. I'll give it to you if you let me into heaven." And God will turn around and say, "Well, I created money. What would I do with that?" What on earth can we give to God in exchange for our souls? Could Bill Gates give God his super yacht? Can you imagine us saying to him, "Well, you can have my house. There's still quite a bit on the mortgage, but you can have it if you let me in. You can take my followers on Facebook or Instagram. Look at all these people that like me." No, he won't take that. "You can take my Netflix account." No, he won't take that. You know, we're talking about here the creator of the universe and everything in it. What could we possibly spend our lives doing that we could exchange it for God's kingdom? To exchange it for our own souls. Fourth motivation. The last verse, 38. Reason number 4. "If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels." I found as I've got older that my sin is increasingly in the things I don't do rather than the things I do. It's the conversations I don't have, it's the words I don't say, the actions I do not do. And mainly because I'm a little bit scared of what people will think and say. What will people say and think? I'm ashamed of that which has brought me life. And Jesus says, well, if you're ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of you. Here's the reason why we should not be ashamed of the gospel and of Jesus. Because one day we're going to stand before God, and everything that we've done will be made known. Every stain and act in darkness, and it will be unbearable to listen to what we've done. And then Jesus at his Father's side will say, no, he's one of mine. I know him. And he'll call out your name. He knows you. He'll say he's safe. He's one of mine. But if we're ashamed of him now, he'll turn the other way, like he never knew us. And if we follow Christ, people in this world may be ashamed of us. People will turn the other way. They will act like they don't know us. But when the day of the Lord comes, Jesus Christ will know us. Let me close with this. The resting position for us seems to be, how far can I push the boundary? How far is too far? Well, at the Lund Q&A, there's always a question, how far is too far? And to break that question down, it means how much can I live as much as I want to, but have the whole forgiveness, kingdom of heaven sort of thing? How much can I enjoy this life, but still enjoy the next life? And we straddle along this fence, justifying it to ourselves as we go. Yeah, God, you can have Sunday morning, you can have Sunday night, you can have a midweek meeting, but the rest of the week is mine. And I'm going to stretch that as far as it will go. I'll try to fit Jesus in where I can. I'll move some stuff around and I'll fit you in somewhere. But you see, that's completely the wrong way around. You know, it says you have been bought for a price. Jesus does not want to be fit into your life. He's unimpressed by us pushing the boundary, seeing how far it will go, sitting on the fence. He does not want to be a part of what you are doing. Jesus is calling you to be a part of what he is doing. Jesus wants you to give up your kingdom and go and be a part of his kingdom. He wants us to surrender ourselves and live our lives for him. Let me close with this verse from Galatians 2, verse 20. I have been crucified with Christ. This is Paul speaking. And let this be the same for all of us. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live. That's those desires we've been talking about. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So let those be our verses that we can say as well.